percentage share of plus energy houses, and along with it, sustainable neighborhoods with surplus renewable energy in different contexts, climates, and markets in Europe. And as you can see from this slide, 4 demos will act as innovation hubs in the subarctic, marine, continental, and Mediterranean climate zones. And the 4 demos are located in Norway, Netherlands, Austria, and Spain, respectively. This slide shows the Syndicare bundle of so-called technical and non-technical innovations envisaged to bring about an increase in plus energy homes and neighborhoods. So technical innovations such as, I hope you can see them, and sorry if it's a bit small, technical innovations such as gray box models, flexibility functions, and index are to achieve energy efficiency and flexibility, while non-technical innovations envisaged include process innovations, such as the integrated energy design process, which is very well established at the building level, but to extend that onto the neighborhood level or district level. Also neighborhood scale user engagement process. That's of course also well established at the building level, but to extend it to the neighborhood level is a challenge here. And developing apps and policy development tools to reduce cost, minding occupant comfort and well-being. And there is also one envisaged innovation here, trying to provide a better overview of the regulatory space that can be squeezed out to facilitate the increase of plus energy homes and neighborhoods. It is also planned to have ICT tools such as the Digital Cloud Hub and also the urban simulation tool, again, instead of the building level, only to extend it to the neighborhood level. In the project, Sintef develops an innovation management approach to monitor and support the development of these innovations and to also systematically identify emerging ones. I'm not going to talk in too detail here, but quite a lot has been said about accelerating energy solutions to achieve carbon neutral districts. It can never be a straitjacket approach, but a process of connecting stakeholders, competence, and capital, in particular shared mindset and strong networks. So while technical and non-technical innovations are essential, in order to manage them, it is also necessary to look beyond them a bit bigger, in particular in regarding carbon neutral districts as an innovation ecosystem and managing it in this approach. So at Sintef, we approach this concretely by considering the innovation ecosystem approach, focusing on stakeholders as full-face actors. So rather than just treating stakeholders generally in a wide sense, we are regarding stakeholders in a narrow sense, where at this end of the spectrum, instead of a faceless entity, stakeholders can be interpreted as full-face actors in that they act and react in the process of the development, which is interactive, evolutionary, and responsive. Whether they are energy experts, building owners, municipalities, ICT companies, or citizens. Their actions and reactions can enable the innovation to materialize, but can also derail the innovation process. So you see here, the approach we have taken is to sort of target 2 combined value chains, the blue shapes, the value chain of the built environment from initiative until the use of the building stock, and also the energy value chain in residential homes. And when analyzing this combined value chain, we focused on the different actor types in the light green boxes active in these value chains. So in our analysis, to be more concrete, we try to break down the stakeholders down onto the building level, district level, and the city level, and as well as map them according to the key phases of the development. I'm reminded of Naomi's presentation where she also showed phases of development in mega projects, and likewise in carbon neutral districts, There's also a so-called generally agreed phases of project development, where we see a lot of shifting stakeholder roles and a lot of knowledge loss in the transfer of one phase to another. No two markets are alike, and existing policies and regulations, customer demands and choices, and market structure and viability, as well as acceptance of new technologies, will necessitate different strategies in all the 4 demo countries in Synekia, from Norway down to Spain. Quick slide here to not spend too much time. For Synekia, just to elaborate, for each innovation, we also try to look at the readiness levels of innovation in at least 3 dimensions. So not just focusing on its technology readiness, which is a scale that is widely used, the 9 stages that originated from NASA, I believe. But we also want to focus on the market readiness level, which measures the maturity of the given need in the market, and also try to look at the societal readiness level of each innovation. And this identifies the level of knowledge about the stakeholders' interests and concerns, and to what extent the product or service impacts society. Then I come to my closing remarks, and I'd just like to reiterate on 3 points. The success of implementing carbon neutral districts requires an innovation ecosystem approach, which more concretely means discerning important stakeholders as full-face actors. And they need to be systematically mapped in each context and the various phases of the project. And secondly, the success of implementing carbon neutral districts requires more than technical and non-technical innovations. One important category of innovations that tend to be overlooked are what I term managerial innovations. And these, as in a nutshell, refers to concepts, frameworks, tools that practitioners use to guide their strategic thinking and strategic activity. For example, in our involvement in projects, despite the importance of stakeholder engagement in planning and implementation of these districts, there's often a lack of stakeholder mapping tools used by researchers and practitioners. So this is a gap that definitely can be filled by research. More managerial innovations are expected to be helpful, and especially given the wide variety of interest, viewpoints, and time horizons of the large number of stakeholders. And finally, it also seems that there's room to bridge the academic and practitioner gaps, to look into the tools by which the respective stakeholder category uses them. So from this perspective, looking at tool users from the perspective of the stakeholder groups. And yeah, the road ahead looks exciting, working with technical and non-technical innovations, as well as managerial innovations, to unleash the full potential of carbon neutral districts. So yeah, having not visited Singapore in 2 years, I was tempted to include this wallpaper as the last slide. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Caroline, for a very interesting and nice presentation, and this dive into Synekia and innovation and stakeholders. So actually, it would be interesting to hear comments from Singapore, our Singapore partners here, about this topic. But maybe we could take that in the panel discussion, Stephen. We have already one question from Per Christer from earlier in the comment as a comment, and maybe others could post questions if they have some. But Stephen, would you like to take us to the next step for questions or discussions?
Yeah, I think this has been very good sharing by all the speakers. Actually, we would like to open this up to the floor now. If you have any questions, as was mentioned, please feel free to put them into the chat. if you do not want to voice out, or it's inconvenient for you to voice out, or it would be even better if you can just unmute yourself and I think ask the question directly to any of the speakers that you might like to address it to, or just open up a particular topic to discuss about. All right. So maybe at this point of time, what we can do as well is, because I understand the speakers might have heard from each other as well, and this is actually the first time we are sharing among ourselves. If you do have questions that you'd like to bring up, do bring them up as well, and we can actually have this discussion. I think at least for the next half hour before we end today's session. Maybe for myself, I get the ball started because I think the experience from Buddha was something that was very exciting when Christopher and Christian was talking about it, and because right now, even in our future campus or the future Punggol Digital District, we do see our neighbors actually. So JDC is the landlord that develops the estate. They actually have very similar digital twins where you have this fly past Google Map thing that you see buildings and all the data. Just wondering, in your experience of building that over at Buddha, was there any what are the main difficulties you have in creating that digital twin, and what are some of the lessons that we can maybe learn from you that we prevent from us doing whilst we are developing ours?
Yeah, well, there was a question for me that presented the digital twin. Yeah. So the thing is that via this project that I was referring to, City Loops, we've engaged in a research and development project or contract with a provider of such technologies that has delivered technologies for the oil industry for many years, but now they're trying to expand their business into making digital twins. And we've been invited to be with them in that journey and trying to utilize this technology for sustainability purposes. For example, things that Hu Chi was these things that Hu Chi was talking about, or Chi Kit Hua, about how we can use such tools to identify materials and masses and register them in sort of like a data bank, so that we know that what kind of materials and masses are available for nearby projects, for example. You were asking if it has been any challenges in using it, and yes, it has, because we are still in the development phase here, so we haven't yet finished, or we haven't yet implemented it. So that is a challenge to actually implement it in the whole organization, in all the relevant departments here. From a technical point of view, we've found it not very challenging actually to feed the solution with data, but however there has been there needs to be some data management competence if you are to operate such tool. And we've also had some challenges in operationally implementing BIM models that we've talked about today as well, and make it smooth and efficient to populate the digital twin with BIM models and with information in the different components in the BIM models.
Right. It's interesting because the one that you've shown actually looks like the external surface, and I think the one that Chike actually showed was more the internal ones. So actually, if you look at this is one question that is a wealth of data, and I think just now one of the speakers did mention concerning about the data usage governance policies, and that's not a simple thing to go to breach, because of, I think in Europe you have GDPR, in Singapore we have PDPA. So and what typically happens is, because myself, I'm also involved in this, and one of the things that happens is that it causes problems with sharing of data. So sometimes you have this whole data lake, or you have all the data there that has to be sensitized, and after which it becomes pointless, and then nobody uses it. So it becomes a very good feel-good factor that, oh, I have all this data I can visualize for you, but it doesn't translate to actually economical or citizen well-being outcomes. Yeah, so I'm just wondering, yeah, if anybody in the floor would like to talk something about this in some of the projects that you may have seen, how data has enabled, for example, materialization in terms of economical benefits or in terms of citizen well-being. Yeah, this would definitely be very good lessons for us to take back and make sure that we implement. As I think Bodo is building yours, we are building ours, that we bear this into mind whilst we are developing this. Would any one of the speakers would like to talk about that?
I could just say one thing again about, I mentioned the quality of life of the inhabitants here and how air quality and traffic, for example, correlates with quality of life. That is something that we're looking into and also gathering data about, but also we're, as I said, trying to analyze using statistics how the city will evolve. For example, how the need for nursing home will be in 20 years, for example. How many 90-year-old people are there here in 20 years, for example, and we can feed the digital twin with that information, and maybe we can plan ahead the capacity of nursing homes, for example, or schools. Given the fact that we're building a new part of the city, maybe we can see if there's a need for increase of capacity in schools, for example, because of that project.
Berit, you'd like to ask any questions to any of our speakers?
Yeah.
As well?
Can you see the raised hand of Ho Chi Kit, Stephen?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I just want to respond to the part on PDPA. In the sense that today we are trying to reclassify information into specific buckets that could avoid the personal data being disclosed. So right now is that although there's no international standards in how we classify data into groups of personality, profile, user group, etc. But this is one form of how we could derive sufficient operational insights into methods that we can make smarter decisions. So that's from what we call categorical data, whereby we affect humans. But in terms of building elements, we actually goes back to the uniclass methods on how we define the various types of mechanical, electrical equipment, building elements. So we could already reclassify them into specific groups so that consistently across geographical regions, we are able to derive the maybe the asset deterioration of the same, let's say, concrete in coastal areas, in city areas, in Singapore, or even in Indonesia. So we are becoming cleverer in how we manage the raw data that comes in.
Stephen, I think whether could we ask a question for Annemie, maybe? Annemie, how do you think we could learn from Singapore? I started with this session this morning saying that I think we have a lot to learn in between Singapore and Norway. What do you think about learning from Singapore in the topic of citizens' engagement?
Thank you, Berit. So I think in our experience, the main challenge is not to set a vision or a goal or to be ambitious. It is how you follow it up in practice, because we see so many projects that start with very good intentions don't manage to actually operationalize these. So any experience on the ground from public sector, commercial sector, civic organizations, universities, research, media, and any interaction between them to make this happen would be extremely useful, especially if it is not just something that is being said, you know, almost marketed like, oh, we've done this, but has it been documented? Has it been monitored? What did they want to achieve with the action? Was it achieved? Was something else maybe achieved? You know, some other kind of value or quality that we didn't originally foresee. So that's also why I posted this comment on, you know, you can find our monitored reports online, open access. So if any of that information is available, that would be very useful, and it would be very good to discuss the processes and then, you know, the roles. So how do you invite citizens and communities in? What kind of role in terms of co-creation can they take? And what are the consequences of these? And it links very nicely to the previous question on data and digital twins, because one of the things we saw is that often digital twins, you know, they show what is easy to measure and where you have a lot of data, which tend to be the physical things. And then things that we experience as people are not so easy to represent in a digital twin or in an augmentation. So how, if we want to use these digital twins more for co-creation with citizens, with communities, getting different stakeholders involved, how do we make sure that that data that people appreciate and that they can recognize, how do we make sure that that gets embedded? And how do we use that in this process? So given that Singapore has already worked a lot with this, there must be a ton of experiences that have been documented. So it would be good to be able to cooperate on this.
Yeah. I'm just wondering whether, I think, Peter, you did talk about my digital city. Is there something you can share there? Because if I'm not mistaken, the digital city portal, I was just going through it, even though it's in that it's not in English, so I kind of struggle, but Google Translate does quite a good job of that. Yeah, it looks to bridge between the data, sharing of data and information with the citizens and with the stakeholders as well. How have you seen that coming?
What we are looking into in the My Digital City initiative is, of course, I mentioned this data governance model for the city. That is part of the work that is going on now. But we have discussed a lot about diversity in data, because it's not only the most accessible data that you need here, but you need to have some kind of approach for managing diversity. And there you need to engage the citizens to be able to get a hold of that kind of data and what kind of problems they would like to solve.
Actually, that's interesting, because maybe now I can redirect the question internally to Tuan Liang, because Singapore do have a lot of data, as what Anne was talking about. I mean, maybe we can address that question about what are the lessons that we may be able to share, experiences that we may be able to share in terms of sharing, because we have data.gov.sg, we have now many digital twins that's coming up. So what are some of these opportunities or platforms that I think we can share with our global partners?
Yeah, I think that to some of these, it's always a tricky part, because there are actually, what we need to do is basically split the data into a few different layers, and this is something, for example, in our Urban Heat Island project, which is called Singapore 2.0. There is a need to basically bring together a lot of residential data, citizen data, and even some of the more sensitive data in the industry side, in terms of the kind of industry processes that they're bringing along in order to model that. But to do that, very often our researchers start off with, in some ways, maybe a too broad a question, as in, can you give us data? And then very often that the agencies say, no, what do you mean? You know, that's a whole universe. It's very, very difficult to say, can you give us data? What data do you have? So it's a bit of a chicken and egg. Very often it needs to start off, I think, from a research question perspective, a little bit more scoped, so that then the agencies who are responsible for holding a lot of citizen data can begin to understand what are the areas in which you can actually give data in a very limited fashion without necessarily giving out the information, but yet at the same time be able to answer the research question. Unfortunately, there is no magic pill to it. The way that I've seen it is that it takes quite a bit of an iterative effort to that. There is yet another development, and this is something that we are trying to do to be able to unlock, say, the use of data, the use of AI for medical research. And that is something that our digital agency, which is called GovTech, is working very closely with MOH, Ministry of Health, together with the hospitals, in looking at how they are able to develop a platform, a digital platform with a lot of trust algorithms, such that you are actually able to fairly quickly and automatically de-anonymize medical data, aggregate it in a way that then allows researchers to come in to be able to then use the data without any kind of a risk of identification, so that then you are able to draw lessons and at the same time allow some of the AI to be able to manipulate the data, if you like, and analyze it. That is something that is work in progress, but I think it's quite involved, and it's not a sharing of a database on Excel sheet, but actually involves multi-layers of encryption and disaggregation and anonymization algorithms to enable that to happen. We hope that succeeds, because if we are able to break the lock for health data, then we think that we're going to be able to do a lot more for everything else. So it's work in progress. Stay tuned, and I think that if we succeed on that end, we will let you know.
Yeah, so you solved the difficult question up front. Right.
Okay, Stephen. Then Naomi has asked for the word. Naomi.
Yes, thanks. I just wanted to build up on that and get back to also Animi's question or challenge in a way. Like, what is it that, we might be able to learn from each other? And I mean, less than answer, I just wanted to share a few thoughts. One being, I earlier talked about mega projects, and one being the Marina Bay area, but in many ways, I always talk about Singapore as a mega project, right? It operates like a gigantic development project, and therefore also has very exceptional tools at hand in regulating that one single project that we always have.
Naomi, I think your mic has gone again.
Right. Yeah.
Oh yeah, now it's back again.
When we try to transfer, translate, or even just learn from this particular mega project, right? Because I do think its circumstances are extremely unique and exceptional. And, having this very confined, limited size, kind of manageable data set to deal with is quite different from any other countries. So this is just one thought. I mean, even though Singapore has massive amounts of data and, surely has one of the most progressive planning agencies that I am aware of, we still have to keep that in mind, right? Its circumstances, it's the way it's managed / governed, right, is extremely unique and not easy to transfer any lessons to elsewhere. But having said that, when we're talking about these data challenges and also with the question of co-creation and participation that Animi was raising, I think we always easily lose track of the idea of data literacy, right? We need to also make sure that people are data literate, that they just don't have access to data, but they actually know what data means, right? They know what role they're playing in the production and use of data. And I mean, maybe not just as urban planners, but also as researchers and to some extent social scientists that we are, I think this is something we have to, be very well aware of. These are just some thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you, Naomi. I think Peter had raised his hand. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing here is related to my presentation, and I said something about a city data plan, and that is something I think is of quite importance for these huge projects. You need to have some kind of plan. You need to engage the politicians in this plan, and of course the citizens as other urban plans. So we are trying to mature this idea of having a city data plan with a local municipality here in Halden.
Maybe just to build on that a bit. I mean, because just now we were talking about gaps and stuff. I mean, and we heard from Tuan Liang as well. Sometimes it's about definition of the research problem versus that of the data that's available. And that brought to mind, I think, one of what Caroline was mentioning about in a talk, that the gap between the academia, the practitioner. Yeah, I mean, me being a faculty and a researcher, I mean, I'm very focused on things I want to do in an academic sense, but how does that actually maps to practice, and how do you actually realize that? I mean, maybe Caroline, you can just talk a bit more about this gap that you were talking about.
Yes, I think in the presentation, I was very much focused on in my area of research. I'm very much motivated on sort of bridging this gap, and in carbon neutral districts, there have been like a vast array of tools being developed, technical to non-technical, and this is also being discussed very much in detail in the two networks that I mentioned, the NX83 and the Cost Action PET EUNet. But one category of tools that's often very much neglected is sort of looking at the carbon neutral district practitioner as a person, as a manager, in trying to manage this as part of their daily work. There are very many motivated individuals around, but it is very hard to sort of push through the goals, the diversity of ambitions, and managing the very extensive networks of stakeholders in all the sort of projects. So I think in particular, I think the research is still emerging, and I think where I like to contribute to, and I hope this can be something as a theme in the Gemini Center, is to focus on these tools that managers and practitioners, municipality managers use on a day-to-day basis to guide their project development of such a project. And I think the strategic management literature has a lot to offer in sort of borrowing this set of tools and put in a carbon neutral district development context.
Great. Yeah. Just to mention as well, I think since we are talking about collaborations between Singapore and Norway, I think there's something that I would like to just put out on the table. This is the good thing about being a moderator. Yes, I can market certain things. So actually, there's if you look at what we have for our Punggol Digital District, or what we are looking at in our campus, I mean, together both SIT as well as JDC, we are looking at how we create Punggol Digital District as a living lab. That's a strategy. But Singapore is a very small country. Even Singapore is a very small country, and Punggol is a very small part of Singapore. So one of the things that we are looking at, and we have started to get some interest in, because living lab is not something that's uniquely Singapore. I mean, here we have already seen Bordeaux, we have seen, I think Gemini Center will have a network of living labs as well. One of the ideas is that we are thinking about coordinating a consortium of sorts where we can share notes on how living labs are created globally. That's one. But also two, are looking at facilitation of data sharing best practices, because what we realize is everybody has a unique set of feature and functionalities within their living lab. Some of them have sandboxes that regulations are not so tight. Some of them have data that, or demographics that, for example, Singapore will not have. For example, if we are talking about farming, that's something that we don't, and we don't have land for that as well. But would there be technologies, or would there be things that we can actually help build? Potentially, we can create that bridge between the various living labs. So that's just something that I would like to just put out for all parties here. I mean, if you all have living labs, you all have smart cities that is open to experimentation, do reach out. I'm also coordinating with other partners in Asia. And we will call out actually a session just looking at that aspects, because I do feel that it's a waste when everybody builds silos of living labs. But we have data that we can't share. So I can imagine the future where we have global citizens, that citizens in Singapore can trial in their local estates certain things that makes the estates much more livable and making the development more sustainable. But those can also be immediately translated to another region in the world. I think that will be a very good thing that if you can establish between Singapore and Norway, that would be great. Yeah.
Peter?
One thing that could be of relevance here is this project that we are working on now related to creating this kind of inventory of digital resources to be exchanged between municipalities, but it could even be exchanged between different smart city initiatives or living labs. So maybe we could discuss that later on in another meeting.
Great.
I think that would be great, and maybe we should start the closing of this meeting. But I think these living labs, Stephen, that you brought up in the end, was that's something that could be transferred to some further cooperation. And Peter has been raising his hand, and we have been discussing it between Sintef and SIT earlier. So, well, this could be a good opportunity for to continue with the cooperation. So, should we say thank you, Stephen, to
Yes.
all participants and speakers?
Yes. So on behalf of all the organizers as well as the colleagues in Singapore, I would like to really thank everybody who is attending this this webinar for your time, as well as all our distinguished speakers for sharing your experience. I must apologize that because of the time limits, everybody just have 15 minutes to share contents that could take 15 hours to share. So, but thank you so much for your afternoon. Berit, you want to?
Yeah. And I would also say thank you to all of you. Great presentations, interesting, and actually we can see them fit together in some way, one way or the other. So thank you very much for your participation and your time. And I'll look forward to collaborate with you later, and maybe see all of you again next week. Next year in Norway-Singapore Science Week. So yeah.
Before everybody hang up, Christopher, can you activate your camera? I want to make a snapshot and then smile into the camera, please. So I'll just make a screen snapshot. Christopher, are you with us?
Yes, and I also have my camera on now, so.
There you are. Do we have everyone? Okay, smile. One more thing, one more time. I think I did something wrong here. Okay, there we go. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. See you all again.
Thank you all.
Bye. Let's continue the conversation. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.